the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians the revival of an ancient conflict recorded in the Bible?
The nation of Israel is a resurrected nation. What if there was going to be a resurrection of another people, an enemy people of Israel?
The Dragon's Prophecy. Watch it now or buy the DVD at thedragonsprophecyfilm.com.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle D'Souza Gill, and I am guest hosting Dinesh's podcast today. I am his daughter. I am also the author of 2 books, The Choice, The Abortion Divided America, and Why God, an Intelligent Discussion on the Relevance of Faith. Today, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the Tennessee 7 special election victory of Matt Van Epps. This was kind of seen as a little bit of a kind of turning point, a little bit of a way to look ahead to the midterms to see how Republicans are performing when Trump is not on the ballot. So we're going to talk a little bit about that race in a few minutes. We're also going to speak with Terry Schilling from the American Principles Project, all about what is happening in D.C. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
You wouldn't know it by looking at the mainstream news, but the past few weeks have revealed 3 major interrelated scandals, all pointing directly to the Democrat Party. The first major scandal has been the influence operation by the infamous Democrat politicians known as the Seditious Six. The lawmakers have been touring news studios, peddling a number of pernicious lies meant to foment disorder and promote seditious conduct within our ranks of our military. The second major scandal was the shooting of the National Guardsman in Washington, D.C., in an ambush by an Islamic terrorists. The third major scandal is the revelation that Tim Walz has been at best permitting and at worst using government programs to funnel over $1 billion into Somali-run organizations, which have returned the favor by promoting Democrat candidates, all while either pocketing the money or allowing it to be sent abroad to support international terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab. Roughly speaking, that's the order in which these scandals were brought to light, but if you want to see the thread that connects them, you have to examine the chronological order in which each emerged over the last few years. For example, the scandal surrounding Governor Tim Walz was first noticed in 2022, which means that the organs and systems facilitating the fraud were set up sometime prior to that point. Alarmingly, the fraud was discovered, prosecuted, and then remained ongoing anyway. It was through the prosecutions that attorneys noticed that Walz did nothing to address the rampant siphoning of Minnesota taxpayer dollars. Over the course of years, millions went to programs like Feed Our Future or to someone like Asha Hassan, but these service providers grossly overstated their contributions and so reaped tens of millions of unearned dollars, which went to things like luxury homes, vehicles, and real estate. Walz did nothing. Apparently, the Democrats claim they didn't want to pursue the issue for fear of being called racist. Or was it because they wanted the votes? According to Zero Hedge, Kaysa Megan, a former fraud investigator at the Minnesota Attorney General's office, said that pushback contributed to reluctance among Democratic officials. There is a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc, Mr. Reagan said. The problem was of no concern to Democrats because it wasn't their money. Rather, it was the Minnesota taxpayers' hard-earned wealth being redistributed. Now, Democrats, they're in favor of this. They like wealth distribution. They also know that the Somalis are a voting bloc for them, so they want to help those people. They don't want to help, white rural America or anything like that. They want to give this money to Somalis, and to be honest, in the Democrats' mind, it's not really corruption because taking money from Peter to pay Paul, that is what the Democrats like doing. So it's not really that bad to them. No one buys the argument that Democrats feared being called racist because that word has long been their tool of choice for justifying all their other scams. You want election integrity? You're racist. You want to do away with Obamacare because it's causing prices to skyrocket? You're racist. You want to stop this Somali racket going on? You're racist. Every time a Democrat intones that word, it's to protect some racket that they have going on. And it's not because they care about, any sort of race. It's because they want the corruption to continue because it benefits them, benefits the Democrats. And so the Democrats are very happy to combine these two desires together. One, to accuse everyone else of being racist, and two, to have corruption to keep themselves in power. This scandal in Minnesota is just a prime example of the Democrat playbook. The real intention of the project was to put vast resources in the hands of unscrupulous criminals. Wait, did I just describe the Democrat Party? Yes. Those criminals would then use those resources to consolidate power and expand their influence. The money was like setting out honey to attract flies. Perhaps Governor Walz choosing to ignore it meant he wanted to attract as many flies as he could. Please remember this concept of gathering. Now, let's take a look at the seditious six. These politicians have been hitting the internet and the airwaves hard to push a series of lies that can only undermine good in order and morale among our ranks of our defense forces. First off, we know these Democrats, by the way, made these videos basically telling people who are in the military not to listen to orders. Well, from the start, whenever they were pressured to name the exact order given by President Trump that they consider illegal, not a single one could provide a concrete example. What order? They don't even know. Basically, they just are saying, hey, don't listen to President Trump. Don't listen to anything. Let's, resort to anarchy and chaos. These are the people who claim to have been really horrified by January 6th and that they're telling our military to do this. These people have absolutely no scruples. So they hedged, saying it wasn't about anything specific, but just a friendly reminder to the troops. Oh, really? Very friendly. That's all. Just a single PSA at this point in time. About that one aspect of military life that literally every service member is trained on from basic training. Nothing to see here. Yet another lie. They know what they're doing is wrong. Were any of the seditious six actually in the position of commander-in-chief? Would they tolerate this blatant attempt to sow dissension among their ranks? For proof, we only need to look at what they said regarding the forced separation of countless military members for refusing the mRNA vaccine during Biden's rule. I didn't want to think back to this, but which was absolutely nothing. Such was the sincere concern for the well-being of our troops at the time and the health of our fighting forces. Instead of apologizing for fomenting sedition in the military, they have all doubled down. Of course, they're Democrats. Senator Mark Kelly has recently been making the rounds on news media to ponderously insist that striking drug boats delivering city-killing-sized payloads of drugs to American shores while in open waters is somehow a war crime. Other Democrats and pundits are going on screen to warn individual soldiers that they're going to face international war tribunals for violating international law by following the orders of the Trump administration. That same administration, they still can't say actually gave an illegal order or what order that would be. Now, there's footage of Michigan Senator Elissa Slotkin talking about Trump canceling elections and asserting military rule over the entire country because that Trump is a dictator trope that the Dems have been using for the past 10 years needed a new coat of paint, I guess. What's the point? Well, it's about destroying our military. Certainly, that is the goal of the Democrats. Why else would they be saying these things? It's also about delegitimizing President Trump, but also the government in general. And it really does basically indicate that they're for anarchy. It's all a piece with what Dems say whenever a Republican gets in power, using fear and demoralization to make people hate the government because of who holds the reins. And so we get to the final scandal, which, while not the freshest in terms of the news cycle, represents a kind of culmination of the other two, which is why we're going to talk about this. Here we have an Afghan national, Ramanullah Lakanwal, a person who we've taken into our country and lavished with taxpayer dollars so he can raise a large family and murder Americans. Lakanwal didn't just murder Americans. His taxpayers' subsidized apartment is all the way on the other side of the country in the state of Washington. Yes, he went from the state of Washington on the West Coast to Washington, D.C. on the shore of the Atlantic by car to kill National Guardsmen. Does that seem crazy to you? Yes, because it is. If Lakanwal merely wanted to kill Americans, he could have been successful in doing that in Washington state, which he should not do. But what led him to go to D.C.? I asked Grok to give a best guess estimate how many Americans would have been within range of his handgun while along that 2,800-mile route, and the answer was 38,500 Americans, with the caveat that this was a lowball number, which could be as high as 48,000 plus Americans. So Lakanwal passed up the opportunity to kill these 38 to 45,000 other Americans, many of whom we can assume, are normal Americans. Possibly law enforcement, many also in the military, who knows. But he decided that he wanted to kill National Guardsmen. He made this a point. Now, who did he kill? He killed 20-year-old Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom and shot 24-year-old Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, who were in uniform in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital city, the day before Thanksgiving. I'm pointing out all these details because Lakanwal is now trying to claim that he did what he did because he had PTSD. But everything about his attack conforms to the kind of symbolism in your standard terrorist attack, not PTSD. The location, the targets, the uniforms, the genders of the victims, the timing, all of that is meant to send a message about the relative safety, even of our troops on our own soil. It's a message that unsurprisingly dovetails with the delegitimizing goal of the seditious six, which also echoes the criminal red-green alliance between Islam and the Democrat Party, demonstrated in Tim Walz's Minnesota. Unfortunately for the Dems, Lakanwal didn't cry out, "Ma Akbar," while committing his deed. He cried out, "Allahu Akbar." Interestingly, these three scandals have more than that in common. Each scandal represents one of the three stages of a color revolution. What is a color revolution? Officially, it's the preferred term for the type of soft revolt the CIA uses to overthrow a government they deem not amenable to America's interest, or at least that's how it's described. Curiously, the recent example of Ukraine has done little but install a criminal anti-democratic kleptocracy that seems hell-bent on fomenting war with the nuclear power Russia, all while collecting billions of our money in aid and material. But such changes are anything but organic. According to the consulting firm Insight Intelligence Group, individuals no longer have the same willingness to die in the trenches as they once did. So gaining power through military means is somewhat outdated. Traditional warfare is becoming less common in favor of more covert means of gaining territory. War is costly and time-consuming. The colored revolution is one of the most significant. A coup d'etat, or the removal of an incompetent government, is actually taking place under the guise of a democratic revolt. Outside forces typically sponsor, plan, coordinate, and carry out revolutions. Colored revolutions are dependent on external causes and cannot occur in their absence.
There's a powerful new film coming from Angel Studios on the Wonder Project. It's called Young Washington. It tells the untold story of how George Washington's character was forged long before independence, when he was just 20, facing failure, loss, and near death. Directed by John Irwin, who made Jesus Revolution, American Underdog, and starring Andy Serkis, Ben Kingsley, and Kelsey Grammer, it's a sweeping, high-quality production that reminds us what true leadership, virtue, and providence look like. This isn't revisionist history. It's the real story told with courage, truth, and respect for the values that shaped America. Young Washington releases Independence Day 2026 on the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding. Become an early supporter by joining the Angel Guild today. Premium members get 2 free opening day tickets and help bring this inspiring story to theaters across America. Go to angel.com/Dinesh. Help make Young Washington the #1 movie this Independence Day. Again, it's angel.com/Dinesh. Christmas, yes, we can say Christmas, is a time of giving, and there's nothing better than knowing that what you give results in saving the life of an innocent baby. And for every baby we save, there's a mom who was saved from a lifetime of regret. Every Christmas stocking you will look at this month is a blessing in your life. Won't you make that possible for a mom today? Preborn provides free ultrasounds to girls and women, and an ultrasound doubles the chance she'll choose life. $140 gives 5 free ultrasounds and saves babies. Just $28 a month can save a baby a month for less than $1 a day. And if you're looking for the perfect tax-deductible end-of-year giving idea, I can't think of a better one than $15,000 gift, which provides an ultrasound machine, saving thousands of lives for years to come. Whether you want to save one baby or hundreds or thousands, join me saving babies right now. Make it a Merry Christmas. Here's how you do it. Call 833-850-2229. The number again, 833-850-2229, or go to preborn.com/Dinesh.
I am delighted to welcome our guest today, Terry Schilling from the American Principles Project. Terry, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Danielle. I'm a huge fan, obviously, of you, your dad, your husband as well. You guys are all fantastic, and anytime I can come on and talk about the things that Americans are suffering from, I'm always open to it.
Oh my gosh. Well, we are such fans of you. And so tell me what you're up to. You said you said a little bit off camera that you're in DC right now. You just did some Media Row interviews. How's it going?
It's going great. So we were at the Republican Study Committee yesterday. I got to interview your husband for a bit, but we sat down with 7 other members of Congress, and we were talking about everything from the culture wars to the affordability crisis that Americans are suffering from. And I think that the next big thing that the Republican Party needs to solve is the lack of family formation, the impossibility for young people to afford homes, to get married, right, and have kids. And if we don't solve this, I'm not alone in this. The members of Congress that we sat down with, including your husband, Congressman Brandon Gill, we're worried about losing our country, not just to decline and having a bad economy, but to losing it to communists like Zoran Mamdani. So we've got to rise to the challenge here and come up with American solutions to these problems, because if we don't, it's not going to be good.
Yeah. What was your sense as far as speaking to them and just even with what you're working on? Do you feel like affordability is the #1 concern right now? I know that's what people are saying. I feel like maybe there's been a little bit of a shift because that was definitely a top issue. But I think illegal immigration also was, kind of bigger earlier this year. But I think that Trump has been doing a lot about illegal immigration. So perhaps people are starting to still feel the pain from all of the money printed during COVID, just all the inflation is still up from 2019 levels. What are your thoughts?
So the big thing is that none of the members I talked to yesterday are backing away from securing our nation, right? And that's ultimately, border security is national security. It's cleaning up our streets. It's getting drugs out of our country. I will tell you, I'm a huge fan of blowing up these narco terrorists in the middle of the Gulf of America. Like, we absolutely need to do this, and we need to go way above board when it comes to taking these guys out, because they've been literally, we're up to, I think, 90 to 100,000 young people overdosing on opioids. It's absolutely out of control. But the interesting thing about the affordability issue was each member talked about a different thing that's hurting Americans and their ability to afford to live in this country. A lot of them talked about housing. That was the most popular thing, and they want to get that under control. But the interesting thing is that healthcare came up, energy came up, education costs came up. These are all like anvils that are weighing Americans down and preventing the next generation from rising to the top. And so we've got several major challenges, and I think that they're on track to solve them. It's just, I think we need more time, and we need to speed things up a bit.
Yes, absolutely. That's a frustrating thing is I wish it could be you vote, you get the majorities, then you can just do everything. It's like, why do we have to keep voting again and again on all these things? We have to just make them happen. But no, we need to keep majority because we can't just have things go back to impeaching President Trump, only going to executive orders. We have to get as much possible and done through our Congress, Senate, to make sure that these all things can get fixed because they're just killing Americans. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what is your analysis as far as this Tennessee 7 race, because we just saw the results of that. We saw that, Matt Van Epps won. He was a Republican candidate. He did win in this I think it was an R+10, came out kind of as an R+9. Everyone is saying it was a Trump +22, like Trump won by 22 points, but it's not actually an R+22. It's an R+10, I think. So I think we maybe lost a point because the Dems put so much into spending and into the race and so on. But I don't know. I've seen both sides. I've seen some pessimism. I've seen people saying, "Oh my gosh, this is really signaling, Republicans are in trouble for the midterms." And then I've seen people kind of giving some different facts. So what was your read on the race?
Well, look, I think these are very similar to the races that we just had in Virginia and New Jersey, right? In terms of the political mountain that we had to climb. This was an R+10 district. Yes, President Trump won it by like 20 some points, but President Trump is a political animal, and he's not someone that can be replicated. He had his own thing. He had his own huge following. The base absolutely would walk over broken glass. And this is an election in the middle of December, right? It's in the middle of the winter. A lot of people don't even realize that there's an election. I think the thing is that Republicans need to realize is that for Democrats and their base, politics and elections, that's their religion, right? There's a huge sect of the Democratic Party that's actually atheist. They don't practice religion at all. This is what they do when it comes to religious practice. So they are the new high propensity voters. And what President Trump did to the Republican Party, and I still think that this is a huge benefit, is he brought over the working class, right? The vast majority of middle class working Americans without college degrees, right, that just go and they work their butts off for their families to provide for them. Those are now Republicans. They used to be Democrats, but the Democrats treated them like garbage. They shipped their jobs overseas, and they were a disaster for them. The issue with the middle class and the working class is that this is not a religion to them. Politics and elections, they go to church on Sunday. They are more concerned about their family and providing for them than they are who's in office. They really don't like politics. They participate in it begrudgingly, but they really kind of dislike both sides. They don't really trust Republicans, but they really can't stand Democrats. They know Democrats, the emerging threat. But I think that the elections, Virginia, New Jersey, predictable outcomes. These are races that Joe Biden won by 10 and 11 points in 2020. They went for Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger by about the same margin. So I think what ultimately these elections in the past month and a half tell us is that the midterms are up for grabs. Right? It's not locked in for Republicans. We're still vulnerable. We can still lose. We've just got to show up, work hard, and produce some policy proposal and an agenda that really speaks to the working class and what they're suffering from.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what's crazy about this whole, kind of dichotomy between the Democrats and the Republicans, the Democrats are saying like, this is their religion, this is everything they do. And it might make sense because, these kind of run-of-the-mill Democrat voters, I guess they're really focused. They really want to go out there and vote. They're set on it. They think that political action is the way that they change the world. Whereas a lot of Republican voters, they're a little bit, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I really like Trump, so I'll go vote for Trump, but I'm not following every single special election and so on. What do you think is the solution to fixing that? Because obviously, we do believe in Christianity. This is not our religion, but we also want people to be motivated to go. I think we need to deliver results. We need to show people that things are better under Republican administration than Democrat administration. So we have a lot to do to show people that. But we also still need them to go out and turn out. So what do you think would be a way that we can deal with this, like for the midterms?
Well, first of all, I think we need to communicate better, right? I just learned this 2 weeks ago. Under Joe Biden, Americans lost $2,900 annually in purchasing power. President Trump, in less than a year, has gotten $700 back. When you lose purchasing power, that means that prices are increasing faster than wages, right? And President Trump, under his watch, Americans are making more money than the increase in prices. So that's a very good thing. The other thing is we need to make sure that people know that not only did they lose $2,900 of purchasing power, mortgage rates went up by 450 basis points. They almost doubled, right? And I'm sorry, they more than doubled actually, because it was around 3.5% before Biden took over. So I know I'm saying crazy like Wall Street speak. 450 basis points is $1,200 extra in your mortgage payment every month. That means young people can't afford to have houses. They can't afford to buy a home. Danielle, I'll share this with you. So my wife and I have our 8th kid coming in March. We bought our current home, and it's totally crazy. I don't know what God's doing to us, but
Congratulations.
thank
You are
you.
so blessed.
So blessed. It's a 5th boy. So we got 4 boys and 3 girls now, and this is going to be a 5th boy. So he just keeps blessing us, and we're very happy about that. But we bought our home when we only had 3 kids. We are busting out of the seams right now, and I can't buy a new house because prices have increased and the mortgage rates have more than doubled. If I buy a house even the same price, my mortgage will go up from like $3,500 a month to over $6,000. It's not sustainable. So we've got to get this under control, at least just for me personally, so that my family doesn't go crazy. But we've been through so much pain and suffering under Joe Biden and the Democrats and what they did while they were in power. We've got to reverse it, and we've got to do it quickly. Otherwise, the American people are not going to forgive us, and they're not going to have anything to vote for. They're going to let the Democrats run roughshod over us.
Yeah, and housing I think really is so important because that is gonna, be the place where a lot of younger people think, oh, if I want to get married, have kids, it's better if I can have a house. That's just, gonna be more sustainable for friendly children's lives and so on. So I think housing is really key because you have all these young people who can't enter the housing market. And so if you're, living in an apartment with roommates and so on, it's just you're not going to be as interested in getting married and having kids because it just seems kind of out of reach. I know that housing has just become absolutely insane. And so having fixes to that as soon as possible is essential. If you look at these kind of differences with the generations, do you feel like it's mostly outside forces in that sense that's made younger generations, because we're seeing a lot of these younger generations not be interested in marriage, they're not as interested in having kids, they're not as kind of those things that people just accepted, like this is what people do, they're questioning that a lot more, especially younger women. Do you think it's mostly from outside things like housing market, for example, or cultural, or kind of everything?
I think it's multiple things, and I actually think it's probably more cultural than it is economic, but the economics feed into it and make it worse.
Mhm.
If you look at our generation, I think you might be Gen Z. I'm a late stage
I'm
millennial.
millennial. I'm at the end of the
Okay,
millennials.
so our parents, they were the first kids born to the no-fault divorce generation, right? So like
Mhm.
their parents were the first ones that just started getting divorced just because they didn't want to be married anymore. There was always divorce in America. You just had to have like abuse, abandonment, or adultery. Like there were very specific things, and for some reason we got rid of that. And so the Gen Xers who came before us, they were hurt by a divorce, and they were the first ones that were starting to think like, oh, marriage actually isn't that sacred. And then they started getting divorced at an even higher rate. And so now you have millennials who are like products of compound divorce generations, right? And so
Mhm.
now by Gen Zers, I think it is starting to return because the millennials that are getting married now and having kids, they're staying married. They're taking it more seriously, I think, in a lot of ways. And
Mm.
it's really a lifelong commitment for me and my wife. It is, I know it is for you and Brandon. And so I think we're going to start to repair that. But I just think that, if your parents got divorced and you felt that pain, it's like, wow, I really should be careful about inflicting that on someone else. And then you
Yeah.
end up getting divorced and you do this to your kids, and now the kids are like, what the hell
Mm.
is marriage even important for? It doesn't matter. And then you also have these like phony and contrived gender wars that are just purely
Yes.
political in nature, where like Men are being convinced that women are worthless and not worth pursuing. Women are actually, being taught by the feminists that men are dangerous and they're patriarchal and we don't need men to protect us. It's like, let's just get
Mm,
over this stuff because like men and women need each other, and these games that we're playing are just really stupid, and not just stupid, they're harmful, like they're hurting us. So
yeah.
those are the two big things on the culture war front. But the economic stuff's killing us too, right? These young people, when I got married in 2009, the first house my wife and I bought was $136,000. Now kids are graduating college with that level of student loan debt.
Ugh,
That's not sustainable, right? You
yeah.
can't have a house when you already have a mortgage of student loan debt. So like
Mhm.
we've got all these compounding factors that have just made it really tough and difficult, and I think we need to start solving them and solving them quickly.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like you've seen some of these like boomer versus, I don't know, millennial or Gen Z wars where the older people say, "Well, I did all of this myself, and so I made all this happen. So, like, why are you complaining?" And the young people are like, "Well, wait, how come college has skyrocketed in price and all these things, you can't just pay for with a summer job or something." And so, I think there's merit to both sides because it's true. Like those older generations, they did work really hard. So it's like we're not
Yes.
devaluing everything that you did. Like everything you did was incredibly hard and a sacrifice. And I think just what younger people are saying today is it's harder to do the same thing because the environment is different. There are some things maybe that have benefited younger people more. Maybe we have more, well, kind of bad, but I don't know. You more technology, or there's advancements in medicine or whatever. There's like some good stuff, but other things have changed and are a lot more difficult to make happen today. So I think that we have to fix those things, and having these kind of like intergenerational wars is not helpful.
No, yeah, I think the boomer millennial wars are too much. I think it'd be better if we just got along. I had an interesting conversation with a boomer the other day about mortgage rates, and I was lamenting that we're at 6, 7% interest rates. And he goes, "Well, you know that my interest rate was 12.5% on my first mortgage." And I said, "Yeah, but what was the mortgage? $38,000?" He goes, "Oh, it was 45." I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like we're dealing with like hundreds of thousands of dollars at 8%. So our mortgage payments are going to be a lot higher. Like people are priced out, and you didn't have student loan debt. That wasn't a thing. Like you literally paid for your college semesters by semester. You could work a summer job and pay for your full 4 year, a full tuition for the year. And so I think there are things that we can do to like get everyone to put their guns down and start
Mhm.
talking.
Um,
One proposal that we're about to come out with, just to suggest in an op-ed, is to
mhm.
remove the capital gains taxes on home
Mm,
sales
mm,
under $1 million. Right? So you have this thing where like the boomers are sitting on extra properties, second and third homes, and they're either renting them out or they're just keeping them because they don't want to sell them to deal with the capital gains. Let's remove those, right? And frankly, I have a rental property. I can do a 1031 exchange and not have to pay the capital gains taxes as long as I take all those profits from that current home and put it into another. Like, why are we treating landlords better than we are tenants or
yeah.
home buyers and homeowners? So I think if you
Um,
were to remove the capital gains taxes on houses under $1 million, I think that would put a lot more inventory on the market. The boomers would start selling their extra homes, and that
mhm.
would give our generation more homes to choose from, and it would actually lower housing prices and give us more opportunities.
Yeah. And not to go back to the legal immigration thing, but I also think, like older generations, they were really moved by this like idea of the American dream. And just from kind of observing like even I actually would say a few years ago, but they're really moved by that concept. But that doesn't really ring true with a lot of young people because I think they feel like that's so out of reach, and America just isn't really like that anymore, which is kind of, disillusioned, sad. But I think it has to do with the fact that we imported so many illegals and so many people who are, taking the jobs, using up everything. Because I feel like the worst thing is, big government, the welfare state, all of that. But if you're not gonna if you're going to import all these people, you can't then be like, hey, look, we also have, you know, meritocracy, American dream situation. It's like, no, we can't, we got to keep you guys away, but then you can like fend for yourself, make life happen, go do those things. That's great. But I just think that importing illegals has just been so harmful for everyone, by the way, not just young people, older people too. And with the housing crisis, that's affecting older people. I mean, property taxes on older people who aren't earning have to continue to pay these insane taxes. It's just nuts. So I think it affects everyone. And I'm not really on one side of the intergenerational stuff because I think it's just been different challenges for different generations. And today it's harming everybody. The illegals are harming the older and the younger.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think the illegal immigration thing has its sown distrust, its sown disorder, right? Like if you're an immigrant who goes through the legal process, you're kind of a total idiot under the Biden and Obama era, right? Like, why would you follow the law if they're going to give you amnesty anyway? Like, you're not very smart. Like, maybe you're a good person and you are a good person to go through the legal way, but like, you're not very smart. Like, and it's because we reward dishonesty and breaking the law, and that sows so much distrust and it hurts us economically. I mean, there's so many problems that are caused with it. I will say, Danielle, the thing that really frustrates me about this town is like there's this glaring, huge problem, especially in DC, that no one's going to talk about because they're all afraid of it. And that's our soft money policy, right? Like when we started doing easy money and printing it to pay off all of our problems, we started to see the middle class evaporate. And what's happened actually, so I just read this, the top 10% of American wage earners, income earners, they accounted for over 50% of consumer spending last year. That's up from 30%. The top 10% accounted for 30% of spending just 20 years ago. This isn't sustainable. Like the wealthy are basically living off of the cream of the top, and they're creating these asset bubbles. It's a total nightmare, and no one wants to address it because we might have to deal with a slight recession or something. I don't know, but like, if you don't solve the money problem and you just keep printing all your problems away, the middle class isn't going to exist, and they're going to eventually choose communism because they're going to think that the problem is the free market, the problem is capitalism, the problem is the Constitution in America, when in reality, it's the Federal Reserve screwing up our entire lives and creating extremely wealthy elites that don't care about the rest of us.
Yeah, and a lot of those people are liberal. A lot of those people are like, oh, but I'm a good person because I'm liberal. And I'm like, what in the world? But yeah, I was just reading an article. I wish I had it in front of me, but it was saying something like in order to be in the top 10% or the top 1%, it's like shifted. It's now like even higher, even just in a couple years. It's like you would have maybe been in a certain bracket like a couple years ago. Now, because of all the inflation, all the more money that's been printed, that money's been devalued. And now it's going to be even harder to get to the next one. Maybe if you're saving up for a home, you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to be able to put down this down payment. Well, now the goalposts have moved. So now it's just going to be, take even longer. It's infuriating. So I don't know how much longer that can go on, honestly. And I don't know if it's either going to like pop, or it's going to be that people don't value our currency and they just think, wow, we need real estate or gold or other things even more because the dollar is not responsible. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that our enemies, like our competitors on the global stage, China, Russia, Iran, these nations are all accumulating hard money. They're all accumulating gold at incredible rates. And they're getting ready to dump we've been using our monetary system and the dollar to like sanction and punish these nations that, we can punish because of our monetary policy. And they're getting ready to thumb their noses at us and stick their fingers in our eyes. And what are we going to say when they dump the dollar? We're America? Like, they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it really is scary. It makes you think, wait, is there going to be a reset or like a shift of everything? Like people, I guess, who have like a real estate or gold or something like that. And then the people who don't, because it's going to be scary if people's savings aren't worth what they thought they were, no matter how old you are, because older people might have retirement or things that they've saved. So it's really frightening. But well, this has been a frightening conversation. But Terry, thank you.
There's hope on the horizon. I believe in our generation.
We're hopeful because we are going to try to get a lot of things done and hopefully can work on these issues. But either way, I think it's good to be smart and to be, looking out for your own home and all that, your own family. Congratulations again on the baby.
Thank you. It's all God. He's giving them.
Incorporating a wide variety of whole food ingredients into my daily routine is key for me, and I get it from these guys. This is Balance of Nature, fruits and veggies in a capsule. These fruit and veggie supplements make it simple for me. They give me the fruits and veggies I need and that I simply just don't have the time or energy to eat. These harvested ingredients are freeze-dried into a fine powder using an advanced vacuum cold process to better preserve nutritional value. I can say with total confidence I'm getting 31 ingredients from fruits and veggies. And hey, if you don't like taking pills, no problem. Consider opening the fruit and veggie supplements, mix the powder into a smoothie, or sprinkle it over your food. You're good. Join me in taking Balance of Nature every day. Now, they're extending their Black Friday weekend sale. Go to balanceofnature.com, get a free variety snack pack plus a free preferred customer membership with your first set of Balance of Nature supplements. Again, go to balanceofnature.com, claim this limited time offer before it ends. MyPillow is still going on with their big 3-in-1 sale. They got a limited edition product, a back in stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. MyPillow bed sheets, just $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings. Regular price $119.98 and now only $29.88. But once they're gone for good, so act now. My towels are finally back in stock. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular price $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first and only time, get their limited edition premium My Pillows made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset, queen size $17.98, kings only $19.98. Also for a limited time, when you order over $100, you get free shipping plus $100 in free digital gifts. Call 800-876-0227. That's 800-876-0227. Or go to mypillow.com. Use promo code Dinesh for the best offers ever. Quantities are low, so order now. It's mypillow.com, and the promo code is DINESH, Dinesh.
Color revolutions happen in steps. There are 3 main stages. The first stage is about consolidation. It's where the networks of underground resistance meet, organize, and recruit. Sound familiar? That's exactly what's been going on in Minnesota under Governor Tim Walz. People have been consolidating money and power. Like I said earlier, Walz has been in the business of collecting flies. The second stage is about discrediting the government. Let's go back to the Inside Intelligence Group's description. Quote, "The second phase aims to discredit the defense, security, and law enforcement forces through strikes, civil disobedience, rioting, and sabotage. Protesters have occupied municipal squares and streets, and they refuse to leave until their demands are met. The logistical network has organized the protests. Demonstrators issue an ultimatum to the government, threatening major uprisings if their demands remain unmet. The government has 2 options: respond with force or accept the demands." Boy, does that ever ring a bell, right? That's exactly what ex-CIA operative Alyssa Slotkin and the Seditious Six are doing right now, discrediting our national defense and security forces. They're calling them criminals and warning them about the consequences. Now we get the third stage, which is described as the nonviolent overthrow of the government, which is actually violent. That's so like the Democrats to boldly lie about their methods and intentions. The Inside Intelligence Group puts the word in quotes because they know better. They say, quote, "In actuality, it refers to open attacks on authorities, as well as the occupation of government buildings, institutions, and other government components or symbols. There's a civil uprising against the current political system. If the government uses force against the protesters, the media will accuse it of committing crimes and killing peaceful protesters. However, if the government makes concessions, it will quickly lose support because the protesters will not accept compromises. Open attacks on authorities. Authorities like the federal government based in Washington, D.C., authorities like the National Guard doing law enforcement on the city's infamously crime-infested streets. Lochinwall, he's the culmination. He's the third stage of the color revolution. 3 Democrat scandals, 3 examples, each representing its own stage in the fomenting of a color revolution. The fact is, everything the Democrats have been doing for the past decade can be categorized in one way or another as contributing to each of these phases. They aren't just collecting money for influence and recruitment operations in Minnesota. Their NGOs are sending more recruits across our borders by the millions. BLM raised millions of dollars in order to promote false narratives and buy themselves mansions to live in. When it comes to discrediting the government, BLM played a major role there too. They demonized law enforcement everywhere to the point where cops in blue cities just checked out of policing for fear of being thrown in prison for the rest of their lives. But these days, no one is a bigger player in the discrediting and demoralization game than the Democrats themselves. Whenever a politician or pundit gets on camera, it's to demonize the administration. Everything is about tyranny or dictatorships or genocide with them. These have never been well-intentioned political critiques born of rational disagreements. The rhetoric, like that used by the seditious six, is baseless, unhinged, and extreme. It's meant to terrorize the minds of the people in order to force them to act on emotion and not reason. Then we have the nonviolent phase, where specific people are targeted. People like Donald Trump, twice, Charlie Kirk, the National Guardsmen. These are violent disruption operations we've become all too familiar with. Antifa, the trans terrorists, the anarcho-terrorism in the streets of blue cities where random women are attacked by criminals with over 50 prior violent crime arrests. Why are Democrats doing this? Why are they trying to collapse the very government where they work? Why destroy the country where they live? The question underscores the level of desperation here. Think about how far gone things would have to be for you to take the position that you'd rather burn it all down. Cast the great American experiment on the refuse heap and try your hand at building something that could never be superior. There aren't too many explanations. One explanation was put forward by Victor Davis Hanson, and that is that the Democrats cause chaos for want of a rational argument. They want to poison our experience under a GOP-led government in order to spoil our feelings towards Republicans. They believe that if we're subjected to enough disruption and violence and extremism in the streets, we'll capitulate just to appease them. Unsurprisingly, that's the same persuasive technique used by terrorists. I mean, the FBI definition of terrorism is the unlawful use of force or violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government or civilian population in furtherance of political or social objectives. How is this dissimilar from what Antifa and the Democrats are doing? So, according to Hanson, Democrats are terroristically threatening the country because they want power. But if the Democrat Party is a political party, as they ostensibly are, why not do the Democratic thing and just use their policies to improve the country instead of subjecting it to an endless succession of destabilizing disasters? You know, like a normal political party in any functioning democracy would do. But really good job at the job of governing. Deliver beneficial results to the people, and the people will reward you with favor at the polls. It's a simple proposition that lies at the heart of any democracy. If we prove ourselves, if we really do a lot of things that the American people elected us to do, then we will get reelected. That is the simple thought behind this. And yet the Democrats insist on being a major political party while simultaneously refusing to play the game the way it is supposed to be played. Many Democrats these days would say they engage in this kind of extremist violence because of Donald Trump, because he's a dictator, orange man bad, or whatever it is. Well, those arguments are hollow now. They're really just falling flat because he was reelected. He is our president. There is nothing they can do about it. This is kind of their last chance to protest him these next midterms, I guess. And so we cannot lose the midterms because otherwise Trump will be facing another impeachment and we will not be able to execute on the Trump agenda in the same way. It's true that President Trump, he just shattered their small brains 10 years ago. He just blew them up because they could just not fathom a Republican or president or anyone who was like President Trump. Although a few honest Dems have yet to succumb to that madness. But I've been looking around and I noticed something. Since Reagan, every single Republican to ever reside in the White House has been called Hitler. This is very common. This is the Democrats' favorite insult. Not only that, but with each successive Republican, the crisis becomes even more frequent and louder. So let's be honest with ourselves here. Does anyone for a second believe that if Donald Trump's successor becomes president, that person will not be treated even worse than Trump? It's almost a given. The Democrats will all coalesce around the belief that the only person who's the most evil in the world is whoever the Republican is, whoever succeeds Donald Trump. I think that's going to be J.D. Vance. And so I think the Democrats, they're just kind of gearing up to oppose Vance. They all believe that he is possibly worse than Hitler. I mean, none of their comments honestly can even make any remote sense. But be it Vance, Rubio, anyone who's in that position, the Democrats, they're going to go incoherent. And they're going to go, I don't know, Vance derangement syndrome or Rubio derangement syndrome or whoever it is derangement syndrome, because the Democrats, they have no way to fathom how to find any common ground between left and right. They've gone so far left off the cliff that their reasoning capacities have just been squished like a bug and thrown into the trash can. That person will be seen like Trump on steroids to the Democrats, because this person will probably be someone, I'm guessing, close to Trump and the admin, maybe a big senator or something like that. But they're going to be someone who's seen as kind of a continuation of Trump's success. He's the leader of our party. He is the Republican leader for the last decade. And he's just been blowing it out of the water, incredible success. I'm such a huge fan of President Trump. So I think this next person is going to be a continuation of President Trump's success. And the Democrats, they're not going to like that. They're going to want to squash that like a bug. They're going to want to stop it because they don't want to see President Trump's vision fully in fruition. They don't want to see everyday Americans with better lives. They don't want illegals deported. They don't want any of this. They want everyone living off of the welfare state. They want us to have communism. They want us to basically, adopt their whole social ideology, which is complete abolition of normalcy or gender or anything like that. They like to pretend that, this is just personal with President Trump, or they'll dig in on every single thing about Trump that they can think of. And that's part of their coercion tactic. But the truth is that it's not about Trump. It's not about his specific qualities, because he's actually extremely personable. He's extremely funny. He is hilarious. He is so charismatic. He is so popular. People just love being around him, which is why before he ran for president, he was so loved by the Democrats. He was loved by Oprah and so many circles on the left. And so many normal people love Trump. So many Hispanic voters, so many just people of all walks of life in different areas of the country love Trump. And so the fact that the Democrats think this is personal against Trump is silly, because Trump is just so incredibly magnetic. And in that sense, it is personal with Trump because he turns out so many voters because of his appeal. Trump has this dynamism, and he has this a way of conveying to people that he truly cares about you and that he is the person for the job. And so people will walk on broken glass to vote for President Trump. They trust him. He has so much trust and so much loyalty with people. I think because he's so real and authentic. And so for Republicans to carry on that momentum in the midterms or in 2028, we need to really channel that energy. We need to be delivering on actual changes to American people's lives. We need to be doing the things that we said we would do. We need to go as hardcore as possible while we have the majority, while we have everything. We need to get as much done as we can. We also need to keep in mind the coalition that Trump put together. He put together a very wide coalition of, like I said, all kinds of Americans who support his agenda. And so we can't siphon off into these tiny factions. It's not going to be good. We need to stick with Trump. We need to stick with the MAGA agenda. That is a winning formula. And I think we need to coalesce around our next candidate, because Trump has so many years behind him in building up his brand, building up his kind of loyalty with the American people. And so when we're starting with someone else, we need to really put an effort. We need to build that up. I don't know who that's going to be. I'm guessing it's going to be Vance, Rubio, maybe somebody else in there also, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. And we need to keep the momentum going because we've had incredible wins. The Democrats are in this weird place. They're having to shift. They're kind of trying to figure out, do they go the Mamdani road, Jasmine Crockett? Do they go back to Kamala Harris? Are they going to go with Newsom? So the Democrats, they have their own problems. They're in their own situation of just complete chaos and not knowing what to do. I'm guessing that Newsom is maybe one of their top choices just because of kind of his prominence as governor in California, maybe J.B. Pritzker, I don't know. But either way, the Democrats have to contend with the radical faction on their side because those activists, those far leftists on their side, they kind of control the party. The kind of the older Democrats, the Chuck Schumers, they're getting phased out. So the Democrats are going radical. I think on the right, we fortunately are not in the situation they're in where we're just completely insane. The left has completely lost their moorings. The sad truth is that it is not personal with President Trump, though. They act like it is, like they just hate Trump, but they just hate Republicans. They just hate white people. They hate hardworking immigrants. They hate women who are traditional wives and mothers. They hate children. They hate heterosexual relationships. They hate anything that really kind of creates goodness in America. They hate Christianity. They hate Republicans. And so once Trump is no longer in office, they will just go back to hating Republicans like they always have. And I think the amazing thing about Trump is he was able to put on this armor and fight back against the Democrats. And so that is what we will need to do too. We will need to do the same thing because we won't just have President Trump to protect us. We won't have him to stand in our way. I wish he could be there as long as possible, but we need to be able to be unfazed by the Democrats when they call us racist, when they call us sexist, when they, just completely lose their marbles. So their hatred of Republicans and Republican policies is because they actually work to make things better. Republicans work for the everyday American, work to lower taxes, have less regulations so you could have small businesses, have a more accountable government, get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. These are all things that allow everyone to flourish as citizens. The Democrats cannot compete with that. It's not because they don't understand the secret sauce behind Republican success. They do, but they want to ruin it. The last thing they want us to realize is that they've figured it out as well. That's why we get the lies about Russia hoax and all of these other silly things because they just want to distract. They cannot win on arguments. They cannot win on substance. They say the words affordability a lot, but it doesn't mean anything. With the Democrats, everything just becomes more expensive. They print more money. They have more inflation. They do not care about actually lowering the cost of anything. They end up just giving things away for free, but that just increases taxes, increases our debt, and so on. So the lies about people, actually illegals, being abducted by masked men, the lies about a military junta when they're the ones whose troops march the impunity in our cities. The lies about free buses, government grocery stores, the need to just have communism one more time. None of that is going to work. All part of their sleight of hand, a distraction. When Republicans govern, Americans win. But Democrats try to control the messaging war. They're all about the glitz and the glamour, the Hollywood, the media, the culture, because they have to spin all of this up to make everything seem a certain way. When Republicans, we're usually about just buckling down, going to work every day and getting things done. And that's also why I think in these special elections, we sometimes don't turn out as much because Republicans are busy. They're at work, they're with their families. They don't live tuned in to every single little election going on. I think that we should. I think we need to tune in because otherwise we're going to lose our country to the Democrats. But the Democrats, a lot of them, they're on welfare. They're not doing anything. Or they're very wealthy, very privileged people on the left. And, this politics stuff is their religion. So when Republicans govern, Americans win. And then Democrats, if we do succeed, if we do things well, they'll try to take credit. If we, fix the economy, all these amazing things President Trump is working on, the Democrats will try to act like, oh, that happened under Biden. Well, we know that that's not true, and we're not going to let them pull those kind of lies. When Democrats govern, we all lose. They play the blame game, they complain, no one's lives gets any better. Which means the Democrats don't hate Trump or Republicans. They hate you. They hate me. They hate random Americans. No matter what you believe or what party you belong to, the last thing they want is for you to be free and for you to be flourishing. Because freedom means less control for the Democrats. The Democrats are all about control. They're all about social engineering. They're all about, creating the society their way, because they always envision themselves as one of the people on the top, not one of the tiny people on the bottom. I think if you're conservative, you imagine yourself more as an everyday American. And you think, wow, no, more freedom is better for all of us. Democrats hate the idea of freedom and everything it represents. They're dedicated to tearing it all down by any means necessary. Whether they're in power or not, death to America is always the order of the day.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.